When I came to Nashville, I had very little equipment in terms of drums, and I really basically had no other equipment. And a big part of the learning curve was knowing what to take to a gig that wasn't necessarily drums or percussion related. And here's what I mean. So when I was doing an original gig when I lived in Chicago, a lot of the times I just had the songs in my head. I memorized the songs because I would probably do maybe one every 2 to 3 weeks, and I would know the songs inside and out. And I probably wouldn't need a metronome or a click track reference because, again, I knew the stuff inside and out. Here, I was getting calls for a lot of original gigs, and I was like, okay, I need to write out charts for this. So I literally, this is from, I would take folders, manila folders, and I would like maybe put it on the floor tom, and I would like look at some notes I would jot down. And I think I maybe got by on 1 or 2 gigs and realizing that maybe that's not it. Maybe I need to have my stuff organized. So I started using literally a 3-ring binder, and I was writing out charts. And I wasn't alphabetizing them. I was just like, oh, these are the charts for the gigs. And so sometimes they would call the charts in different order. And so I'd say, hold on, guys, give me a second to flip through it. And really quickly I learned, this isn't going to cut it. And people kept telling me to get an iPad for my charts. And I didn't really have a lot of money to spend. And I didn't know how to implement that. And that would mean more spending. So what I did was I fished out, this old tank here. This is believe an iPad 2. And I would write charts out and scan them and put them on the preview app just in because it's such an old OS here. And really what I would do I would have this on the gig, and sometimes I would search for a song or search for a chart, and this, the pinwheel of death would start spinning. And if you've ever been on stage and there's a delay in between songs, that those few seconds when there is dead silence on stage, dead silence in the audience, it just, you feel your soul drop out. So very quickly I learned, this iPad isn't going to cut it either. So went out and got an iPad Pro, and this is what I'm using right now. So the iPad Pro has a huge, big, bright display here, and it's a great tool to use, and I got a few apps to use with that, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And one of another great investment I made was buying a clamp like this for the iPad. So one end, the iPad goes in here. Other ends will clamp right onto a stand. So I usually clamp this onto my hi-hat stand. And so I just have the charts right here, and I can literally, so it's on a ball and swivel, and I can literally just swipe in between songs, and really just go with the song list. I can also search for a song if it's a country standard, because again, I probably have about 3,000 songs on my iPad right now for the library. But another thing I realized quickly that I need to have when I was doing gigs both on Broadway in Nashville and also off Broadway was I needed to have some kind of submixer. And I thought it was kind of maybe doing a little bit too much, taking too much to a gig. But it's actually been really beneficial to me. And what I mean with a submixer is, instead of having a monitor usually by your hi-hat and usually by your left ear, I will have them actually give me just the feed for the monitor. And if you can see right here, I'll actually just have them feed it right into this old Behringer mixer that I had. So it's a small compact mixer. And what I did was I actually had an old guitar pedal board, and I kind of just Velcroed it down here along with a few other things. It's a bit cumbersome, but it works. And what I did with that is a couple things. So I can always get a monitor feed in there. And another thing, especially on Broadway or just pretty much on the road right now, everyone's using in-ear monitors. So what I did was I got these guys. You take a look at these, actually are great little value here. This is, I got this off of Amazon. These are, believe a KZ10 quad drivers. These work great for me. Cost about $50. So I put this into my headphones. And then I have a monitor feed in one channel. And then next, sometimes I'll actually take an old mic. You can see this is literally an old beat up dynamic mic, maybe a 57, 58 knockoff. I literally use this as an ambient mic. because if my in-ears are just kind of cutting out too much sound and making it sound like I'm in a closet, I'll put this into a channel. And with that, I also usually run a click track. And so very early on, I got out my old buddy, Dr. Beats, from the practice room, and I don't know if you can hear him right now, but he has a pretty low volume, and he's pretty finicky. And very quickly on a gig, I realized, oh, this isn't going to cut it, especially because the 16th note button is stuck. So a lot of times I'll get like this weird tempo. This just wasn't going to do it for me. But I really needed a click track to be able to know where the tempo of a song was, especially if we're going from one song to the next. I'm not familiar with that song. And if you count in a song too slow or too fast, usually within the first 3 seconds, you're like, oh boy, I made a big mistake. So another thing I did was I got my old iPhone, which the home screen button doesn't even work, so I have to use it on this screen. And I just have a free metronome app that I use. And I literally just run that into a 2-track right here, into my submixer, and then that goes into my ears, and I can control what I'm hearing with that click. Now, that also gets a little bit cumbersome because since it's a touchscreen, and since I'm having to, in between songs, if I have to scroll, it kills a little bit of time. So one thing I've done is with one of my apps here, which is called Fourscore, I actually, I usually program the click tracks into all of these. So the click isn't the best quality, but it really works. It gets the job done. So here's one song for a chart, and then this is from a gig I just played last week, and then I scroll to the next chart, and I automatically have that click start for me. And this is a really quick, easy way to save about 3 to 5 seconds in between songs, which, if you're on stage, can feel like an eternity, can feel like a lifetime. So that's one thing I've done. And again, I usually have this clamped down to my hi-hat. Another thing I really am a big fan of doing also as well is I've been using an app called Live BPM. And so what Live BPM is literally, so it has a mic right here using the iPhone mic. So if I start snapping out a tempo, or if I'm playing, it'll tell me what tempo I'm playing at. And why this is really important, because sometimes I'm on a gig and the lead person will just go right into a song. And let's say it's a song like Amarillo by Morning, a George Strait tune. I notice that sometimes people really lay that back and they'll maybe count it in at like 108, and it's really about a 121 BPM song. So if I see on my live BPM, oh, they're counting in around 108, I might need to gradually speed it up and not do it all at once. And so that's a really effective tool I have. Now, right now, this is a little bit cumbersome using this pedal board, especially dragging it to a Broadway gig. It's adding about another 15 pounds to my load, and when you're having to carry multiple pieces of equipment for multiple blocks, it can be a bit cumbersome. So what I'm planning on doing here in the future is getting a Pelican case, kind of like a hard, waterproof plastic case, and maybe get a little bit of a smaller mixer, and maybe get a new metronome that that's tactile, that I can actually touch or use a tap tempo with, and try to minimize that footprint. Also something that I can use while I'm flying. But for right now, this is what I'm using. And really, the iPad Pro is pretty expensive. The clamp cost me about like 50 bucks. And like the metronome apps were either free or $3. So it was a nice way where I could cut some corners here and not have to go and break the bank to have a good monitoring situation, which is really essential if you are playing in Nashville, if you're playing on Broadway, if you're playing around the city.